welcome every single location around the world. It's so great to be joining you. My name's Dave. If I've never met you before, it is so good to meet you. Thank you for joining our church, especially if you are here for the very first time, especially if you have got questions. Maybe you maybe a bit skeptical. You don't know, but you're just wondering. Maybe you'd say, I'm not interested in this faith thing at all. I've just come to appease a family member or a friend. Hey, well, listen, we're here for you today. Because my hope and my dream and my vision is that hopefully we can illuminate something of the Christian faith that you maybe didn't realize before, and perhaps you can meet God and He changed your life forever. Because that's what's happened to us. We're just a bunch of normal, messed up people who met a perfect God and He's seen Him change our lives. But first, let me ask you a personal question. What are you like with keeping secrets? Oh. Now, some of you, it's not just that you're good at keeping secrets. It's like getting anything. It's like blood out of a stone. But, you know, some of us, we're really good. We're kind of locked down. We're Fort Knox. Others of us, we just can't do it, can we? You get that kind of guilty sweat go down your face as soon as that person walks in. You know, growing up in Wales, you'd be going to the school gate, and the first thing you'd be asked is, oh, what's the goss then? What's the goss? Oh, do you know anything about Judith? Oh, I know a lot about Judith. What do you know about Judith? You know, there's something about it, right? Now, I'm okay. I can keep sort of sensitive information. I'm a pastor. People confide in me. People talk to me. I'm good with stuff like that. But I am terrible when I'm excited about something. Terrible. Yes, these guys, the DLT guys, our senior leaders, they're saying, yes, it's true. Once, Pastor G told me about this awesome holiday he was going to take Heather on. Heather walked into the room. I was like, are you really excited to go to? Only to feel the stare from the side because he hadn't told her it was a surprise. Oh, bad move. Do you know, when I get excited because I love to buy my wife sad stuff, but I've got this little sort of almost kind of uncontrollable puppy inside. It's like I just can't keep it in. When I knew I was going to propose to her, I had to buy the ring on the same day I was going to propose because I knew I couldn't trust myself. She'd have been making a cup of tea to turn around. You know, I like to buy sad stuff, and so recently I wanted to buy her a new watch. You know, she had one, it broke, and I knew it meant a lot to her, and I really wanted to find one. So another thing that you might not know about me is I love Gumtree, because I love a deal. So my nickname in DLT is Double Shot Del Boy Dave. Because I like 2 shots in my coffee and I'll get a deal, please. Because to be honest, there are a lot of people in the world who've got more money than sense. No offense, it's true. Right? And people buy stuff for full price and then 6 months later go and buy the new thing. And so I just go and buy the first thing they bought at half the price. Come on, guys. It just makes sense. I also love the kind of, is it dodgy kind of question. And I'm pretty sure that I haven't bought anything illegal yet. But anyway, I found this watch on Gumtree, and it was the one that my wife wanted, and so I bartered this guy down, got him down a good price. And then he said, oh, I'll meet you tonight. And he lived in Swindon, I live in Hereford. I said, what, you're willing to drive over? I thought, this sounds dodgy, but it's fun. So I arranged to meet him in the pub that's opposite our house at 10 p.m. And I love that feeling. What, you don't know if you're going to get in a fight. You know, you don't know who you're going to meet. I once met this guy from Bristol in the middle of the pouring rain on the M5, and his girlfriend came with me and said, oh, I'm sorry, I had to come with him. He's terrible with this stuff. He once bought a PS4 in a KFC car park, and it never worked. I was like, I'm never going to forget that moment in my life. Anyway, so I go over, and he's a nice fella. His girlfriend's in the car. That's kind of like a bit, if it's a bloke in the car, you don't get in the car. Anyway, so I bought this watch, and it's expensive. So I hand over like a good bit of money. It's expensive. And I'm walking back over to my house, and I'm telling myself, don't give it to her now. Your anniversary's next week. Save it. It's a special gift. I went straight upstairs. Sal's got your gift. I just can't help myself. Oh. Now, there's funny secrets, but I don't know about you. I think we live in a world where more often than not, we question things now more than ever, don't we? We don't know what we can truly trust. And when you find something out about somebody that was different to what you expected, and I don't know about you, sometimes it erodes that trust and that faith. And I think in our society, more and more that's happening. Now, I'm not pro or not pro Donald Trump, okay? But he's a fascinating character because the first few years of his presidency have all been about, can you believe the guy? You know, he's penned that sort of phrase, fake news. The idea that what you're reading is just that little bit adjusted, just that little bit twisted. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I read the news, I'm like, is it? I don't know anymore. You know, I read an article on BBC News, so it could have been fake, but I read an article on there that this guy has made a living out of going onto websites and writing fake reviews. Making a living. And then I found out that the #1 restaurant on TripAdvisor in London last year was a complete fake. A complete fake. This guy had set up a restaurant in his garden shed, and by getting people to write fake reviews, it became the #1 restaurant in London. I don't know about you, that blows my mind. Can you imagine some billionaire, like flying in, you know, landing in Heathrow, and he's been bigging it up to all his billionaire mates and going to the #1 restaurant. Lands in Peckham. It's somebody's garden shed. It's absolutely ridiculous. But I don't know about you, but for me, it erodes my belief in truth. Can I really trust it? Is there really any true reality anymore? And actually, as a society, we're moving further and further away from being able to believe that something is truly true or right or wrong. More than ever, we're becoming islands of our own ideas. I'll take a bit of that, and I'll take a bit of that, and I'll take a bit of that, and as long as it's okay with me, that's how I see the world. But you see, that's just like a buffet. And ultimately, you're playing God. I think that's right. I think that's right. Oh, don't like that. Cost me a bit too much. I think that's right. And we're moving away from the fact that there's actual truth. You know, we're getting more and more confused about our identity, who we actually are as human beings. And yet, deep down, we know that there is truth. A world without truth, a world without fundamental things that are right and wrong or real or did happen or didn't happen is a scary place. And we hear things, don't we, that we think, oh, man, that's crazy. But then, when that crazy thing gets backed up, you've got to take note of it, haven't you? Just think about the Loch Ness Monster up in Scotland. What in the world? Now, if you don't know what the Loch Ness Monster is, think about the Loch Ness Monster. Deep down, we all know it's not true. It's not true? Oh. Provoking you. You know what's a really interesting thing? Some of us find it easier to believe in a beastly animal in a lake than a God that loves us. It blows my mind. But anyway, I don't think it's true, right? But if I woke up on Monday morning and they caught the thing, and literally I could go and see it, I'd have to take note. I couldn't just say, oh, I don't want to believe in that anymore. It's right there. It's right there. Do you know what? It would change my world in some way. I'd think twice about swimming in a lake. I don't know about you. I probably would never go in the sea again. Don't worry about great white sharks anymore. Nessie. You see, the cornerstone of the Christian faith is also the most controversial part of it. It's the idea that actually somebody died on a cross and 3 days later their body wasn't found. And there were these claims that he'd actually risen from the dead. And more often than not, we now say, oh, you can't believe that. You can't believe that. It's ridiculous. Dead bodies don't rise. Nessie lives, but dead bodies don't rise. Some people think that it's the greatest hoax in history. But actually, if you start looking at the fundamental historical facts, if you start looking at the evidence, if you start looking at the circumstances around it, it almost becomes impossible to actually deny that something happened. Something happened. And then if it happened, This crazy guy claiming to be God, he was going to rise again, and then he actually did it. Maybe, just maybe, what he had to say about other things has a greater weight than we give it. Imagine that Scottish madman who's had too many whiskies on the day they find Nessie. Suddenly, he's verified. You actually have to start to listen to the other things he might say. You see, when it comes to the resurrection, some people say, oh, well, it's just the Bible. You can't believe the Bible. It's irrelevant. But the problem with that is that if you throw the Bible out as irrelevant, you've got to actually throw out most of modern history. I did a history degree, and on my first year, this guy walked into our lecture hall, and he was a very, very well-known historian in our university, and he walks in, he slams this book down on the table, and he says, listen, I'm not a Christian, I don't have faith, but you've got to get over your prejudice with regard to this book. It's one of the most verified, reliable, historical documents in the world, and we need to study it. Turn it around, it was a Bible. You see, you can't just say, oh, well, it's the Bible, it's just written too long ago. You might not be a philosopher, but you've probably heard of Plato. And if you've never heard of him, many of the worldviews that we have right now are formed on his initial ideas of philosophy. You might not be an expert in Roman history, but you've probably heard of Caesar. Yeah? But the reality is, how do we know these guys existed? There's written documents down. How do we know we can trust it? Well, what a historian does is they look at the time they lived, when it should have been written, and then the first manuscript, they take the gap of time in between, and the longer it is, the less reliable it is, and then the number of manuscripts that you've got that you can compare and cross-reference it. When you actually start looking at the Bible, it's a game changer. You see, here's Plato, right? He lived 400 years before Jesus, but the first time that we ever had a manuscript saying of what he actually taught or wrote was nearly 900 years after the death of Jesus. There's only 210 manuscripts, but we don't doubt that he lived. We don't doubt what he said, what he spoke about. Caesar, nearly 1,000-year gap, 950 years, only 250 documents. When you start going to the New Testament, parts of the New Testament are just 50 years. And you might, in modern day terms, think 50 years is a long time, but in a historical sense, it's like first-hand news. It's like first-hand news. The longest gap in the New Testament is just 350 years. And there's nearly 24,000 cross-reference manuscripts to prove that it's one of the most reliable things in all of human history. Not only is it Christian history, but there are non-Christian Roman historians who wrote about this man that did miracles and then rose again, and they never found his body, and his believers thought he was the Son of God. You can't just say, don't want to believe in it anymore. So what happened? Well, I guess one of the options is the body was stolen, isn't it? And some people say, well, the Roman authorities or the Jewish authorities, they stole the body because they didn't want the disciples to make up this lie that he rose again. But that's absolutely just unimaginable. Because at the end of the day, after Jesus rose again, thousands of people started believing in him. Thousands of people started to revolt. It started to cause issues for the Roman Empire. It started to cause issues for the Jewish leaders. If they had the body, surely they would have just said, he's not God, he's dead. Here he is. It makes no sense that they would have the body and never bring it out. So some people say that, well, the disciples stole the body, but that makes no sense either. The majority of the disciples went on to face horrendous deaths. Stephen, the first one, stoned outside the city walls. What, for a lie? A lie? And do you know, people might die for a lie if it benefited them. You know, maybe if their families were walking around and living in big mansions and driving Lamborghinis today, we could sort of maybe say, yeah, perhaps. But in fact, it cost them everything. It cost them their children's security, their livelihood. They were chased out of homes. Well, you would do that for a lie? So I guess then we're left with one thing, that they were all crazy. Some massive, huge, hallucinogenic, delusional moment in history that people have kept for 2019 years. I don't know about you, but that takes more faith for me. The documents stack it up. The surrounding circumstances stack it up. The reasonable reasons around it stack it up. Here's the reality. There is an empty tomb. There is an empty tomb. Christians aren't as crazy. In fact, the Christian faith is one of the most verified historical faiths where you can actually not just rely on the element of faith, but also reason. In fact, it's less reasonable to just throw it out. But you see, today's not a history lesson. It's an introduction. I'm not here to win something over on you on whether you can trust the Bible or how and why Jesus might have risen from the grave. I want to introduce you to him. Because you see, people thought that he was dead and buried. And what do we mean by that? We mean completely finished, in the past, no future. And do you know what? If he didn't rise, then everything that we believe just crumbles around it. But instead, he's alive. And he's still alive now. He's still alive today. I wasn't looking for him, but he was looking for me. He put people around me, friends and family. If you're here today and you're friends or you're associated with Christians, that's not an accident. It's the seeking out of God trying to come and find you. Maybe you find yourself related to people that you never thought you'd ever be related to. That's not accident. He's trying to find you. He's trying to find you. He's trying to reach you. Some of us, we're friends with Christians at the school gate, and they're not perfect. They have their bad days, but we know something's different about them. There's something different about their marriage. There's something different about their family. There's something different about the fact they always seem to have this capacity to keep going and this vision and this hope. Do you know what? That's not a personality trait. It's Jesus. There's nothing strong about me other than Jesus. There's nothing resilient about me other than Jesus. There's nothing faith-filled about me other than Jesus. There's nothing visionary in me other than Jesus. You see, because every single one of us has got things wrong, have we not? 19 years ago, I found myself exploring these questions, suddenly looking at the reality of my own life, those moments of jealousy, those moments of selfishness. I couldn't escape the weight and reality that my choices had consequence. And ultimately, I couldn't do anything really about it myself. And then I heard about Jesus, who said, I'll take the shame of that past, the pain of that mistake. I'll take the guilt of that wrongdoing, and I'll take it to the cross, but not just there. I'm going to make it dead and buried. Because of Jesus, my past is completely finished. My mistakes, even the ones that are yet to come, are in the past. My insecurities, my fears, they've got no future. See, the Bible says that he will swallow up death forever. And they say, don't they, there's only two realities in life, death and taxes. But what this Bible verse means is that he swallows up the pain of death, the sting of death. We don't need to be afraid of it. We can live our life in hope of heaven, that he will wipe away all the tears from every face. Is this not good news? You know, as I was preparing today, I really felt there are some of us who know this truth, but as Christians, we stay at the cross, never letting go of our own pain. You got to let go of the cross. You got to move on, because Jesus did. I'm not talking about not valuing it. Don't get religious on me. I'm not talking about not being humble. Don't get religious on me. I'm talking about forgiving yourself. I'm talking about taking your past and making it dead and buried. But for those of us here today that maybe don't know Jesus, perhaps you've never been to church. Maybe you grew up in church, but you've just gone your own way. It just became irrelevant, unattractive. Your friendship group were doing more things outside of church. You just drifted gradually. Here today is a fresh opportunity, not just for life and hope and vision, but for the most essential human need, forgiveness. See, the Christian faith is a faith of hope and life and truth. But firstly, it's the reality check of the need of the state of our hearts. Says God and Father of our Lord Jesus, who's shown us extravagant mercy. For this fountain of mercy has given us a new life. We are reborn to experience a living of energetic hope through the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. Here today, if you're not following Jesus, you need forgiveness. And I'm not saying that in a judgmental way. I'm saying it just because it's real and honest. And that's the point I had to get to 19 years ago. I had to come and surrender and say, Jesus, would you give me a second chance? I want to follow you. I want to lay down my mistakes and day after day head where you're going. I want to be born again. A second chance, a new life, a new opportunity. We said it right throughout this series that heaven is not a place for good people. Because after all, what is good? I don't know about you, but before I met Jesus, I thought I'd go to heaven. Why? Because I wasn't as bad as the person next to me. Heaven is real. And so is hell. And like that, it's not just a place for all the bad people. It's simply the crossroads of our choice to say, Jesus, would you be my path, my truth, my life? Would you forgive me? Would you wipe away my failings, my debt, my sin, and welcome me home? Because Jesus said one other profound thing, the Lord's Prayer, that heaven is not just a place we're waiting for, but that when we start following Him, heaven starts to come to earth. That's why your Christian friends always have a smile, not because it's always easy. That's why your Christian colleagues always have hope, not because they're deluded about the state of the world. It's because they're starting to experience heaven on earth. They're starting to experience the peace and the hope and the joy of heaven on earth. They're starting to experience the power of heaven on earth. When barren wombs are opened, when sickness is healed, when debts are miraculously covered, when insecurities are eradicated, because heaven starts to come on earth.